Good afternoon, Santa Clarita. As we head into the weekend, I'd like to make a few more announcements about some decisions that have been made and some new measures that are taking place as part of Santa Clarita's ongoing response to the coronavirus. First, want to update that we have 28 confirmed cases here in the Santa Clarita Valley. Again, we want to make sure that people are taking those proper precautions, and if you do feel symptomatic, please follow the protocols and notify your primary care physician and take direction from there. Also want to reiterate that you may have seen in the media recently that a contractor for the Santa Clarita Water Company was doing work on an apartment complex here within the city and did enter over 60 different apartments to perform predominantly routine maintenance, and that was done prior to being known this contractor was tested positive. So I believe all of those residents have been notified and are taking direction from the appropriate protocols as well. So keep in mind, as we're seeing across LA County, across the country, there will be an increase in positive tests because we're testing more. And so that is a natural expectation that as we continue to broaden testing throughout LA County, you will see more positive tests. But please don't be alarmed by that. That is a natural expectation. But given that, it's important that we continue to follow the social distancing requirements and our Safer at Home program. That being said, we're coming into the weekend, and I did want to reiterate that at this point, all city parks and city trails will remain open through the weekend. There are some trails that are closed, but those are being managed by other agencies. So, for example, Towsley Canyon, Whitney Canyon are two of the most widely used trails in the Santa Clarita Valley. Those are closed. They are closed per the direction of the Mountains Recreation Conservancy, which manage and oversee those trails. While city parks and city trails remain open, please remember that all basketball courts, tennis courts, dog parks, pickleball courts, and our restroom facilities will be closed. Those of you that would like to play basketball and think it would be a good idea to remove some of the blockages of the rims, that is vandalism, and that will then certainly result in enforcement there. So please keep that in mind this weekend. We want to keep these parks and trails open. I fully recognize the importance of exercise both on physical and mental health, but if we are not able to maintain appropriate social distancing and people aren't following the guidelines, it will lead the city to have no choice but to add additional closures, which is the last thing that we want to do. Another update coming into Monday for those of you that still rely on Santa Clarita Transit for getting to and from work. We have experienced a significant decline in ridership as to be expected. So therefore, we will be reducing our passenger travel and some of our bus routes, particularly to Century City, downtown LA, and Warner Center. So please, before Monday, visit our SantaClaritaTransit.com website to review what specific routes have been closed or if there's been a time change so that you are not caught waiting for a bus that has, in a bus route that has been temporarily suspended. On Tuesday evening, the 31st, the City Council is going to convene an emergency session. The purpose of that is to take up an ordinance that will remain into effect through May 31st, providing rental protection for commercial and residential rental protections that will preclude anyone from being evicted as a result of not being able to pay due to the fact that they have been you have been forced out of work due to other government directives. So that meeting will be taking up on Tuesday. I know that today the governor also announced a statewide overlay that employs those protections. However, we felt that it was important for the city of Santa Clarita to still adopt our ordinance to ensure that we are in cohesion with the County of Los Angeles, who on last Friday introduced a protection ordinance for the unincorporated areas of the community. So it was important that whether you live in Castaic, Stevenson Ranch, other parts of the incorporated area, that you have the same that the people of Santa Clarita within the city boundaries have the same protections as those businesses and residents who live outside of the city limits, but still within the Santa Clarita Valley. So we'll be taking that meeting up on Tuesday, so the order will be in place prior to April 1st, and that protection order will remain into effect until May 31st. There certainly is an opportunity to extend that protections beyond May 31st if necessary, but for now, we are going to stay in line with the governor and the statewide directive. That's going to be a unique circumstance. We've been watching other cities, how they're holding their special meetings. So while there are still restrictions on public gathering, we do want to take as much public comment as we can. I think the best way to ensure your voice on this issue is heard is to either call City Hall, 661-259-CITY, and our staff is still here, and they can certainly take down your input, or you can email all the city council members directly. You can find all of our emails on the city's website, and you can share it electronically as well. And our city staff will make sure that all the council members have everybody's input and comments prior to the meeting on Tuesday. So that will be, again, Tuesday evening at 5 p.m. And we encourage everyone to participate the best you can, and to certainly watch live on our website, as well as the other streaming options. With that, again, I want to take a moment and thank again all of our community members that are on the front lines, our healthcare workers first and foremost, for their work they're doing. Our supermarket and store employees, I know there is still significant pressure being placed on them to restock and to ensure that everyone has the products they need. I want to reiterate, there is no need to hoard. The California Grocers Association has made that clear, that there is plenty of food, and it is making its way to our stores. So again, please do what you can to take only what you need. And again, I want to thank all our other essential workers, including our teachers who continue to work to give our kids the best education possible under these most trying circumstances. So with that, please keep in mind this weekend, we want to keep our parks and trails open. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is if people follow the directives and the social distancing orders. Otherwise, we're not going to have a choice, and I'll be back next week having to announce additional closures, which is the last thing the city wants to do. But with that, I'm happy to take some questions and answer them the best we can.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Some of the people who are commenting are saying that the city should be locked down. How do you balance hearing feedback like that with the other feedback you're getting from the community?
I think we take it from a day-by-day analysis of the data and the reporting and guidance from public health officials. It may ultimately come to a more aggressive lockdown situation. I look at Puerto Rico, and just today their governor issued not only a curfew and a complete lockdown of the island from 7 p.m. until 5 a.m., but now residents are restricted to only being able to go out for essential services 3 days a week based on your license plate. And that's certainly something we don't want to get to here in Santa Clarita or throughout the country. But ultimately, if the social distancing protocols and others are not to be followed, it's going to leave the government agencies with little choice. So we want to try to balance that. If we have to get into a more aggressive lockdown, certainly we will. But we'd like to give people as much freedom and responsibility as possible at this point.
Okay, Laura is asking if you would please remind everyone to stay off the playground equipment even if parks are open, and maybe talk a little bit more about how people should be using our city parks at this time.
So thank you for that reminder. Yes, I know I had alluded to the dogs parks and the basketball courts and tennis courts are closed. Again, playground our playground equipment is closed. It has been closed. That was closed for well over a week. And that was a concern last week, watching parents allowing their toddlers to use that playground equipment. That is closed, and please follow those orders. Again, our public parks are open. You can visit them with your family, and as long as you stay within your family group, you're fine. But you don't want to be. If you're seeing people, your friends or others, you need to maintain that social distancing requirements. Otherwise, we're going to have no choice but to close the parks.
Kim is asking, she saw a group of people having a picnic at one of our city parks. What message would you send to them?
So we have seen that ourselves, city staff. We have seen people, again, ignore the ordinance. Again, on that case, on a picnic, you don't know if it was a family, just having a family picnic. That is certainly appropriate. But if it becomes a more expansive population, then clearly that is a violation, and those activities are what's going to lead to a closure of the parks. And one other thing I want to bring up that I hadn't mentioned, I know there's been some questions about parking enforcement here in the city. We have asked our parking enforcement staff to take a more passive approach and be more responsive to complaints than a more proactive enforcement policy. We realize that people are working from home, and that puts added pressure on parking in certain areas. But that doesn't mean you can park anywhere. You still need to not park in front of fire hydrants, or you can't use disabled parking spots. You can't block fire access or other emergency access. You can't block driveways. I know there's been some concern that, I'm blocking my own driveway. But our parking enforcement doesn't know if you're blocking your own driveway or not. And so you still have to follow basic protocols. But we are trying to relax those enforcement where we can. But it's important that people still remember there are laws in place, and they will be enforced. And certainly, our sheriff's department is doing a tremendous job keeping our community safe. And the last thing I want to do is to see our law enforcement having to leave their regular patrols to go chase people off of basketball courts, or to chase people off of play structures at our city parks. Just follow the guidelines, and we'll be okay.
Isaac wants to know how many people in the Santa Clarita Valley are diagnosed with COVID-19 and how many are currently hospitalized.
So at this point, I am aware of 28 confirmed cases. I do not have the official number of hospitalizations. However, my understanding is a vast majority of them are still isolating at home. and have not had to be admitted to the hospital.
Kim would like to know why Henry Mayo is taking 7 days to process the tests.
That is a question more for Henry Mayo. I know that the tests do take a period of time. They're not instantaneous, but the duration I would have to defer to the healthcare professionals who administer those tests.
Okay. Arthur is asking if you can enforce Starbucks and others to wear gloves when they serve food and beverages.
So again, businesses that have been deemed essential does not excuse them from following protocols. So if you are interacting with the public, we again certainly expect those businesses to maintain their social distancing requirements, and that taking all safety precautions, whether that be gloves or masks. Those are important safety factors, and again, whether it's a Starbucks that or other companies that interact with the public, or those companies that have been deemed essential by the federal or state government and are continuing to operate, your employees still deserve and are required to be given afforded the same social distancing and other protections as anybody else. So just because you're deemed essential and are allowed to be open, it does not mean it's business as usual. You still have to take the steps to protect your employees.
We're still getting a lot of questions about rent. Can you go over what you said earlier about the eviction moratorium?
Yes. So on Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock, the City Council is going to take up an emergency ordinance that will provide rent protection for both businesses and residents. It will be a 60-day basically hold stating that no evictions can occur during that time as a result of loss of employment or loss of income as a result of the mandatory shutdown by either the state, federal, or local governments. Keep in mind that it's still important that if you can, you do continue to pay rent. We want to keep the economy moving. For those of you that are property owners, I believe the governor announced today, certainly yesterday, that a number of financial institutions have also instituted a mortgage break, if you will, moratorium, to allow for some protections on the mortgage front as well. Because I certainly realize that it doesn't help if we put if there's a moratorium on rent payment, but then you still have to make your mortgage payment, and that certainly hurts the economy. So I believe the state has put those protections in place, or other financial institutions. But again, on Tuesday, the city will adopt an ordinance to protect our residents and commercial businesses from eviction if you have been shut down or have been temporarily put out of work as a result of government directives.
There seems to be some confusion. I know we've gotten some calls here at City Hall as to who has jurisdiction over what happens where. Garcetti, Barger, and yourself. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
So the city of Santa Clarita is covered by the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. Only two other cities in Los Angeles County have their own three other have their own health department. That would be Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Pasadena. The other 85 cities in LA County rely on the County Department of Public Health to provide those directives and guidelines. So at this point, businesses that are being shut down as a result of the coronavirus, that is a mandate from LA County Department of Public Health. That being said, I believe the city of LA, Long Beach, and Pasadena, all of their ordinances very much, if not identically, mirror the county's directive, so that there's as much clarity as possible throughout LA County on that front. There are areas that I know we're talking about parks and trails. Right now, the city of Santa Clarita, our park system is separate from the Los Angeles County park system, separate from the LA City park system. So what the decisions they have made in the city of Los Angeles around parks and others does not impact us here in Santa Clarita. Some of the county decisions do, because we do have an overlay with LA County. So as I said, parks like Whitney Canyon Trail, Towsley Canyon, are shut down as a directive of other government agencies, even though they're here in the city, because they are managed by different organizations.
Okay, so Dante is asking, and he's mentioning that people during this time, of course, are suffering from stress and fear and panic. What recommendations do you have for the community to kind of stay together and make sure that they're looking out for one another?
Well, I think part of that is why we want to keep our parks and trails open. It's critically important to feel that you can get out, get some exercise, be with your family, see other people, as long as you're maintaining that social distancing. So that's important what we're doing here. I believe the county has mental health resources available. If you are a senior, which is somewhat something that we know we're a population we're very cognizant of and concerned about with the self-isolation. The senior center, I was there on Wednesday helping with the drive-through lunch program, and it was amazing to see that the social workers at the senior center are actually taking a proactive approach. They have a list of about 800 seniors that have registered with the senior center, and they are actually calling them proactively to check in. And that's so important to be able to do, particularly within our senior community. And we've heard a number of anecdotes of residents taking care of one another. I can even use up my own personal experience that my mom was home over the weekend, and her neighbor was at the farmer's market, and he texted her to see if my mom needed anything. She gave him a list. Our neighbor came back, left the groceries on her front door, for her to have, and that's just one small example that we're seeing across the city of neighbors taking care of neighbors. But it's important to check in on everyone, and fortunately we have the social media abilities to interact. Seeing a number of posts of people having their own happy hours via Zoom with their friends and neighbors, and I think that's a great opportunity to take advantage of.
Trevor would like to know if the farmers markets are still going to be open.
At this point, farmers markets still remain open. There are some limitations. I believe the county has installed on farmers markets about what can be sold there now, whether food that is prepped off-site cannot be sold at farmers markets. So just be cognizant of that when you go in. And if you're expecting to be able to buy, I know the tamales are always a high-selling item here in Santa Clarita. I believe make sure those can still be sold. I don't believe they can right now. So just keep that in mind. You may see limited selections of some of your favorite vendors, but on balance, the farmers markets will remain open.
So for our last question on a lighter note, Paul is remembering one of our most famous council meetings here in Santa Clarita and wants to know if the McRib is going to be affected by COVID.
Those are deep questions. Fortunately, McRib, I think, is ultimately a decision for McDonald's. So if the McRib is still available, it will be, but only drive-through. You cannot enjoy your McRib in the restaurant at this moment. So I want to thank everybody for the time today and for the questions. Again, reiterating that please follow these protocols and guidelines this weekend. I know the sun's shining. The forecast going into next week looks even better. And the last thing any of us at City Hall want to do is to close those parks and close the trails so you can't enjoy them while the weather gets better. Please follow those guidelines. That's the only way we're going to be able to keep everything open. And reality is, the more aggressively we follow the guidelines, the quicker we'll be able to get out from under them and return back to a sense of normalcy where businesses can be open, schools get back into session, and we're able to enjoy the quality of life we have here in Santa Clarita. I know this is tough. I have my 3 kids at home as well, and I know that they're going a little bit stir crazy without being able to interact with their friends and live their normal day-to-day life. But these are unique times. How we respond to them will define us as a community. And as I said before, Santa Clarita is no stranger to challenges. Just in the last 6 months, we have faced more challenges than most communities will face in decades. And time again, Santa Clarita has come through. And I have no doubt that we will do the same here with the coronavirus. So please look after your neighbors, look after one another, and hopefully we'll get out of this sooner than later.